She
It's
was a
all right,
poor
sir.
orphan with nothing,
Take my hand,
just a baby
and
on the
I'll guide you
way and a
across
strong
safely.
will to survive. One afternoon, she helped a blind man on the street, but what she didn't know was that the man was hiding a past that would change her life forever. Who was this blind man? And what did he find in the poor girl's kindness that the rest of the world couldn't see? Sit back and find out as we begin this shocking and touching story. This is the heart-touching story of a poor orphan named Amara. She was alone in the world, struggling to provide for her unborn child. But everything changed the day she rescued a blind beggar, not knowing that the man was actually the lost son of a billionaire. What began as a simple act of kindness soon opened a door to a love and a life she never imagined. The sun over Balagan Market was a hammer. It beat down on the endless river of people, on the colorful mountains of fabric, on the heads of hawkers shouting prices. For Amara, it was just another Tuesday, another day of walking until her feet swelled, of smiling at customers until her jaw ached, of selling the cheap plastic sandals that barely paid for her next meal. Her own sandals were worn thin. The dust of the Lagos streets was a second skin on her ankles. She was 19 but felt 100. Her belly, still a small, secret swell beneath her faded Ankara dress, held the only person in the world who was truly hers. An orphan since she was 10, Amara knew what it meant to be alone. The baby's father, a sweet-talking mechanic named Tunde, had vanished the moment she whispered the word pregnant. He had promised her the world and left her with nothing but shame and a growing life. She paused, leaning against a wall to catch her breath. The noise of the market was a living thing. Buy your original lace. Sweet oranges, sweet like sugar. Move, move, make I pass. That is when she saw him. He was sitting on a broken plastic stool near a gutter, a dirty bowl in his lap. He was blind. His eyes, though open, were milky and stared at nothing. He was young, maybe in his 20s, with a strong jawline hidden under a rough beard. Flies buzzed around him, but he did not seem to notice. He just sat, a statue of misery in the middle of chaos. A group of teenage boys, bold and bored, swaggered past. One of them flicked a cigarette butt into the beggar's bowl. Another laughed and kicked the stool from under him. The man fell hard onto the filthy ground. His head hit the pavement with a sickening thud. The boys howled with laughter and moved on. The river of people parted around him and flowed on. Nobody stopped. Nobody cared. He was just another piece of the city's furniture. But Amara's heart, already heavy, broke. She saw her own loneliness in his fallen form. She saw her own despair in his silent shame. She walked over. Her shadow fell across him. "Are you all right?" she asked, her voice soft. He flinched, pulling his limbs in like a tortoise. He said nothing. "They are gone now," she said gently. She reached down and touched his shoulder. He trembled but did not pull away. With a strength she did not know she possessed, she helped him sit up. His clothes were rags, and the smell of the street clung to him. She looked at his empty bowl, then at the 2 warm meat pies wrapped in paper inside her own bag. They were meant to be her dinner and breakfast. They were all she had. She took one out. "Here," she said, pressing it into his hand. "Eat." His fingers, calloused and dirty, closed around the pie. He lifted it slowly to his nose, smelling it as if it were a long-lost memory. He took a small bite, then another. He ate with a quiet dignity that did not belong on this street. When he was done, he still had not spoken a word. Amara stood, knowing she should leave. She had her own problems, her own hunger, but she could not. A proverb her grandmother used to say echoed in her mind. A single tree cannot make a forest. "Do you have a place to sleep tonight?" she asked. He simply shook his head, a small, lost movement. Amara looked at the sky. The sun was beginning to dip. Soon the market would close, and the darkness would bring its own dangers. She looked at this broken man. Then she thought of her small, single room. It wasn't much, but it was safe. It was hers. "Come with me," she said, the words leaving her mouth before she could stop them. "You can stay with me." For the first time, he turned his face towards the sound of her voice. A single tear traced a clean path through the dirt on his cheek. He could not see the girl who was offering him the world. But did he understand he had just met the only person who would not let him fall? Amara's home was in a crowded tenement yard, a face-me-I-face-you compound where privacy was a myth. To get there, they navigated a maze of narrow alleyways, the air thick with the smell of cooking oil and damp washing. Amara guided the blind man carefully, her hand on his elbow. "Careful, there is a gutter here," she would whisper. "Step up now." He followed without a word, his trust in her a silent, heavy thing. Her room was at the end of a long corridor. It was small, barely big enough for her thin mattress on the floor, a small table with a kerosene stove, and a single wooden chair. But it was clean. A bright piece of kente cloth was hung over the one window, giving the room a warm, golden glow. "We are here," she announced softly. She led him to the chair. He sat, his back straight, his hands resting on his knees. He looked like a king on a broken throne. Amara felt a sudden wave of self-consciousness. The room was her whole world, and it was so small. She had brought a complete stranger into it. Was she crazy? Her neighbor, Mama Funka, would surely have something to say about it. "Amara, you want to bring thief into your house? In this Lagos," she could almost hear her say. But then she looked at him again. He was not a thief. He was just lost. "What is your name?" she asked as she lit the small stove. He was silent for a long time. I don't know," he finally whispered. His voice was rough from disuse, but deep and clear. Amara's heart softened further. No name, no memory. "Then I will call you Kachi," she said. "It means what God has written." A small, sad smile touched his lips. "Kachi," he repeated as if trying on a new coat. "I like it." She took out her last meat pie and a small loaf of bread. She sliced the bread and shared the pie, placing a plate on his lap. They ate in silence. The only sounds were the distant shouting from the street and the sizzle of a neighbor's frying plantain. For Amara, who had eaten alone for as long as she could remember, the silence was not empty. It was full. It was company. When they finished, she poured him a cup of water from her clay pot. His fingers brushed against hers as he took the cup. His skin was warm. A jolt, small and surprising, ran up her arm. "Thank you," he said, his first words of gratitude. They landed in the quiet room like jewels. That night she laid a spare wrapper on the floor for him, on the other side of the room. She slept on her mattress. The presence of another person breathing in the dark should have been frightening. Instead, it was comforting. For the first time in months, she did not feel like she was facing the world completely alone. She was protecting him, yes, but in a strange way, he was protecting her too. His silent presence was a shield against the crushing loneliness. She lay awake listening to his steady breathing. Who was he? Where did he come from? A man who spoke with such a clear voice, who sat with such straight posture, did not seem like someone born on the streets. He had nothing. She had next to nothing. Together they had a room, a shared meal, and a name. Was this the beginning of something? Or was she just inviting more trouble into her already troubled life? The days turned into weeks. Amara would leave for the market early each morning, leaving Kachi with a small flask of water and whatever food she could spare. When she returned in the evening, tired and dusty, he would be sitting in the chair, exactly where she had left him. But he was changing. With regular food and the safety of the room, some of the tension left his shoulders. Amara had given him a spare sponge and a bucket of water. He was clean now. She had bought him a cheap shirt and trousers from a second-hand seller. The rags were gone. Without the dirt and despair, she could see him more clearly. He was handsome, with high cheekbones and a strong, elegant neck. A faint silvery scar curved near his right temple, the only blemish on his smooth, dark skin. He still did not speak much, but he listened. He listened to the stories of her day, the rude customers, the funny things she overheard, her worries about the rising price of gari. He would nod, his face thoughtful. He began to respond, not with memories, but with observations. His mind was sharp. "That woman you speak of, Mama Funke," he said one evening, his head tilted. "She speaks loudly because she is afraid. Her words are armor." Amara was stunned. He had never met Mama Funke, only heard her booming voice through the thin walls. But he was right. Mama Funke's husband had left her years ago. Her loudness was a performance of strength. Kachi could not see the world, but he understood people. He had a different kind of sight. A routine formed. She would work. He would keep the home. He could not see to sweep, but he would neatly fold the wrappers. He would sit in the quiet and think. Sometimes when she came home, she would hear him humming, a low, beautiful melody that he did not know the words to. One evening she came home with a small bag of oranges. As she peeled one, the sweet scent filled the room. "My mother," he started, then stopped. "What about her?" Amara asked gently. "She loved oranges," he whispered, his face a mask of confusion. "She would sit at a large black table, polished wood, and she would laugh." It was the first piece of his past. A tiny glittering shard. Amara's heart ached for him. She wanted him to remember, but a selfish part of her was afraid. If he remembered, he would belong to another life, another world, a world that did not include her. Their friendship deepened into something more tender. It was not a romance of passionate kisses, but of small gestures. She would read the newspaper to him. He would tell her stories he would make up, tales of brave kings and clever tortoises, to make her laugh. One night she woke up with a sharp cramp in her belly. She cried out in pain. Instantly Kachi was by her side, his hands finding her in the dark. "Amara, what is it?" he asked, his voice thick with alarm. "The baby." "Just a pain," she gasped. He placed his hand on her belly, his touch gentle and hesitant. At that exact moment, the baby kicked, a strong, sudden thump against his palm. Kachi's breath hitched. A slow, wondrous smile spread across his face. It was the first real smile she had seen from him. It transformed him. It lit up the room more than any lamp could. "Hello in there," he whispered to her belly. In that moment they were not a poor girl and a blind beggar. They were a man, a woman, and their unborn child. They were a family. And Amara knew with a certainty that both thrilled and terrified her that she was falling in love with him. How long could this fragile peace last in a world as loud and cruel as theirs? While Amara and Kachi built a life in a single room, another world existed just a few miles away, across the third mainland bridge. It was a world of high walls, sprawling gardens, and air-conditioned silence. It was the world of the Olanrawaju family. The Olanrawaju mansion on Victoria Island was more like a palace. White columns stood like sentinels at the entrance. Inside, marble floors gleamed under crystal chandeliers. The air smelled of money and lemon polish, but for all its grandeur, the house was drowning in sadness. Chief Obafemi Olanrawaju, the patriarch, was a titan of Nigerian industry. His empire spanned oil, logistics, and real estate. He was a man used to getting what he wanted. But the one thing he wanted more than anything, he could not buy: his son. A year ago, his only son and heir, Adekunle, had vanished. Kunle, as everyone called him, was the pride of his father's life. Sharp, kind, and with a brilliant mind for business, he was set to take over the family empire. He was last seen driving home from a late meeting. His car was found wrecked and abandoned on a lonely stretch of the Lagos-Ibadan expressway. There was blood, but no body. The police had no leads. The family's private investigators found nothing. Chief Olanrawaju sat in his enormous leather chair, staring at a framed photograph on his desk. It was of Kunle, smiling, his arm around his father. He was the picture of his son, tall, handsome, with the same intelligent eyes. But in the photo, Kunle's eyes were bright with life. "Find him," the chief said, his voice a low rumble of pain. "I don't care what it costs. Just find my boy." Across the desk sat his nephew, Chidi. Chidi was everything Kunle was not. He was smooth where Kunle was sincere. He was flashy where Kunle was reserved. Dressed in a perfectly tailored Italian suit, with a gold watch on his wrist, Chidi oozed confidence. He had stepped into the void Kunle had left, managing the family's affairs, becoming the chief's right-hand man. "Uncle, we are trying our best," Chidi said, his voice dripping with false sympathy. "I have alerts out in every major city. I've doubled the reward. No stone is being left unturned. I promise you." Chief Olanrawaju nodded, his shoulders slumped. He trusted Chidi. In his grief, he did not see the flicker of greed in his nephew's eyes. He did not see the satisfaction Chidi felt every time he sat in Kunle's office. Chidi had always lived in his cousin's shadow. Now the shadow was gone, and the sun was finally shining on him. "A whole year, Chidi," the chief whispered. "A whole year." "I know, uncle. It's a tragedy," Chidi said, placing a comforting hand on the old man's shoulder. "But we must be strong. For the company. For the family name." He smiled a tight, reassuring smile. "For me," he thought. "My time has finally come." He was the one managing the search. He was the one who fielded the calls from cranks and false prophets. He was the one who would ensure that Adekunle Olanrawaju, if he was somehow still alive, would never be found. As he left his uncle's study, his phone buzzed. It was another tip. Someone claiming to have seen a man who looked like Kunle in a market on the mainland. Chidi sighed. Another dead end he would have to pretend to follow up on. He had no idea that this time, miles away in a tiny room, the biggest threat to his ambition was listening to a pregnant girl read the day's headlines, completely unaware of the billion-naira world that was hunting for him. And Chidi had no idea that the past he had tried so hard to bury was about to knock on his door. The rainy season arrived, and with it, a new set of struggles. The roof of their compound leaked. The alleyways turned to mud. For Amara, the rain brought a constant chill that seeped into her bones. Her pregnancy was more obvious now. Her back ached, and her morning sickness had returned. The market women would whisper as she passed. "See that small girl with her big belly? No husband? Tisk, tisk." Their words were like tiny stones, but Amara had built a wall around her heart. Inside that wall were two people, her unborn baby and Kachi. Money was tighter than ever. On rainy days, customers were few. Some days she came home with barely enough to buy a loaf of bread. On those nights, she would insist Kachi eat the lion's share, lying that she had eaten at the market. He could not see her hungry eyes, but he could hear the hollowness in her voice. "You are not eating, Amara," he said one evening, pushing his plate towards her. "I am fine, Kachi. The baby makes me less hungry." It was a lie, and they both knew it. He hated his helplessness. He was a man, yet he could not provide. He could not protect her from the whispers or the hunger. All he could offer was his presence. So he did. He would massage her swollen feet in the evenings. He would tell her stories to distract her from her worries. He became her anchor in the storm of her life. One night, the rain was beating a furious rhythm on the corrugated iron roof. Amara was trying to sleep, but the baby was restless, turning and kicking inside her. She tossed on the thin mattress, a low groan escaping her lips. Kachi heard her. He moved from his spot on the floor and knelt beside her in the darkness. "Is it the baby?" he asked. "Yes," she whispered. "He is playing football tonight." A hesitant silence fell between them. Then he asked, his voice barely audible above the rain, "May I?" She knew what he was asking. She nodded, then remembered he could not see her. "Yes," she said. Slowly, as if touching something sacred, Kachi placed his large, warm hand on her rounded belly. He held it there, still and focused. Amara held her breath. The intimacy of the moment was overwhelming. No one had ever touched her with such reverence, not even the baby's father. For a moment there was nothing. Then a powerful kick landed directly under his palm. Kachi gasped, a sharp intake of breath, his fingers splayed in wonder. A wide, beautiful smile broke across his face. He pressed his ear to her belly, listening. "He is strong," he whispered, his voice full of awe, like his mother. Tears welled in Amara's eyes. They were not tears of sadness, but of a profound, heart-stopping joy. In that dark, leaky room with the storm raging outside, Kachi's hand on her belly was a promise. It was a vow. It was the touch of a father. "We are a family, Amara," he said, his voice firm, as if making a declaration to the heavens. "You, me, and this little footballer." She reached out and her fingers found his face, tracing the line of his jaw. He was her Kachi, her rock, her love. She leaned forward and pressed her lips to his forehead. It was their first kiss, a kiss of gratitude, of partnership, of a love that had grown in the most barren of soils. But even as her heart soared, a cold fear gripped her. What would happen when the baby came? How could they afford it? How long could they survive on love alone? And what right did she have to tie this man to her, when a whole other life might be waiting for him somewhere out in the world? The old radio that belonged to their neighbor, Papa K, was a constant presence in the compound. It usually blared Fuji music or the frantic commentary of a football match. But on this Sunday afternoon, it was playing a program of old highlife and classical music. Amara was mending one of her dresses, her fingers moving nimbly with the needle. Kachi was sitting in his usual chair, listening to the rain. Suddenly, a new song began to play on the radio. It was not highlife. It was a piano, a single haunting melody, both sad and beautiful. Kachi froze. His head snapped up. The needle-like focus he usually reserved for listening to Amara was now directed entirely at the radio. "What is that?" he whispered. "It's just music, Kachi," Amara said, not looking up from her work. "Papa K and his Sunday program." But Kachi was on his feet now, stumbling towards the door, towards the source of the sound. "That piano!" he said, his voice tight with a strange urgency. "I know it!" He stood in the doorway, his blind eyes wide, as if he could see the notes floating in the air. Images, fractured and confusing, flashed in his mind. A huge room with polished wooden floors, a grand piano, black and shiny, a woman with a kind smile, her fingers dancing on the keys. She was laughing. The music swelled, and another image surfaced. A word. Not a name, not a place, just a word. It felt important. "Rosewood," he said aloud. The word felt foreign and familiar at the same time. Rosewood. The song ended. The spell was broken. Kachi swayed, putting a hand on the doorframe for support. He was breathing heavily. Amara rushed to his side. "Kachi, what is it? What did you see?" "A woman, playing that song," he stammered, his hands coming up to grip his head. "And a name. Rosewood. Does that mean anything? Is it a place?" Amara's heart was doing a frantic dance against her ribs. It was happening. His memory was returning. A part of her was soaring with hope for him. Finally, a clue, a piece of his past to hold on to. But another part of her was gripped by a cold, selfish fear. Rosewood did not sound like a place in their neighborhood. It sounded rich. It sounded like it belonged to another life, a life where a poor, pregnant market girl did not fit. I don't know, Kachi," she said, her voice trembling slightly. She helped him back to his chair. "It could be anything. Maybe a name from a story you once heard." He shook his head. No, it felt real. Amara, it felt real. He was excited, alive with the possibility of knowing who he was. But Amara felt a distance opening up between them. He was no longer just her Kachi, the man who belonged in this room with her. He was becoming a puzzle, a mystery she might not be able to solve. And if she did solve it, she feared she would lose him forever. That night she lay awake long after he had fallen into a restless sleep, his whispers of rosewood punctuating the silence. She was happy for him. She truly was. But as she placed a protective hand on her own belly, she had to face the terrible question. If Kachi found his old life, would there be any room in it for his new one? The word rosewood haunted their small room for days. Kachi would repeat it, trying to unlock the memory it held. For Amara, the word was a constant reminder that the man she loved was a stranger with a past that was calling to him. Hope and fear wrestled in her heart, but hope for his sake had to win. She had to do something. She had been saving every spare naira for the baby. A small tin box hidden under her mattress held her treasure. A few thousand naira painstakingly gathered. It was for baby clothes, for extra food, for an emergency. But this felt like an emergency of a different kind. The next day, instead of going to the market, she went to a newspaper vendor's stand under a flyover. "I want to buy old newspapers," she told the man. "From last year." The vendor, a wiry old man with glasses perched on his nose, looked at her strangely. "Old paper? For what? To wrap suya?" "No," Amara said firmly. "I am looking for something." She spent nearly all her savings buying a huge, dusty stack of old dailies. She carried the heavy bundle back to her room, her arms aching but her spirit determined. Kachi was surprised when she returned so early. "I didn't go to the market today," she explained, setting the stack on the floor. "Kachi, we are going to look for you." For hours, she sat on the floor, carefully turning each yellowed page. She scanned the headlines, the advertisements, the public notices. Kachi sat in his chair, listening to the rustle of the paper, his body tense with anticipation. It was a hopeless task, a search for a ghost in a city of millions. Her back began to ache. Her eyes grew tired. She was ready to give up. She was on the last paper in the stack, a copy from over a year ago. She was just about to fold it away when a small box in the corner of a page caught her eye. It was under a section titled Missing Persons. The headline read, "Have you seen him?" Underneath was a photograph. It was a man in a sharp suit with a confident smile. He was younger, cleaner, his hair perfectly cut. But there was no mistaking the face, the high cheekbones, the strong jaw, the intelligent eyes. It was Kachi. Amara's breath caught in her throat. Her hand trembled as she read the text. Adekunle Kunle Olanrawaju, age 28, missing since May 14th. Last seen wearing a grey suit. He has a distinctive scar near his right temple. He is a beloved son and brother. A substantial reward is offered for any information leading to his safe return. Please contact this number. The scar. She looked from the picture to the man sitting in her room. She had traced that same scar with her fingers. Adekunle Olanrawaju. Kunle. It was him. Kachi must have sensed the change in her. "Amara? What is it? Did you find something?" She couldn't speak. She just stared at the picture. This was not just a man. This was a man from a family that could afford to put pictures in national newspapers. A man who wore expensive suits. A man who belonged to a world of polished pianos and names like Rosewood Estate, which was probably the name of his grand family home. He was not hers. He had never been hers. She had only been borrowing him. "Amara, please," Kachi begged, his voice cracking with desperation. "Tell me what you see." She finally found her voice, but it was a thin, broken whisper. "I found you, Kachi," she said, tears streaming down her face. Your name is Adekunle." He now had a name. He had a past. But in that moment of discovery, Amara felt like she had just lost everything. What would happen when she made the call? Her hand shook as she held her small, cheap phone. The number from the newspaper was saved in it, a ticking bomb in her palm. For a full day she did not call. She just watched Kunle, as he absorbed the news. He was excited, terrified, and confused all at once. He kept repeating the name. Adekunle, Kunle. It was like a key, but he still could not find the lock. Amara knew she was delaying the inevitable. This was not her choice to make. She had to call. For him. Taking a deep breath, she walked outside the compound for better reception and dialed the number. It rang twice. A smooth, professional voice answered. "Hello. You've reached the Olanrawaju family office." "Hello," Amara stammered, her heart pounding. I am calling about the missing person. From the newspaper. Adekunle Olanrawaju." There was a sharp intake of breath on the other end. "Please hold the line," the voice said, suddenly urgent. A moment later, a new voice came on. It was cultured and confident. "This is Chidi Olanrawaju speaking. To whom am I speaking and what information do you have?" It was the snake himself. Amara, not knowing any better, told him everything. About finding a blind man, about his memory loss, about the scar, about the name Kunle. On the other end of the line, in his plush office on Victoria Island, Chidi felt the blood drain from his face. It couldn't be. After all this time, he had been so sure the job was finished. Kunle was alive, a blind beggar in a slum. His carefully constructed world was about to collapse. But Chidi was a master of control. His shock lasted only a second. It was replaced by cunning. He had to handle this. He had to get to Kunle first. "My God," he said to Amara, his voice full of expertly faked emotion. "This is the miracle we've been praying for. Where are you? Where is he? We will come right now." Amara gave him the address, her voice trembling with a mixture of relief and dread. An hour later, a black, gleaming Mercedes SUV pulled up at the edge of her slum, a spaceship landing in a junkyard. People stopped and stared. A man in a sharp silver suit stepped out. It was Chidi. He was handsome, polished, and smelled of expensive cologne that was overpowering in the thick, humid air. He wrinkled his nose slightly at the smell from the gutter, but quickly smoothed his expression into one of deep concern. Amara led him through the maze of alleyways to her room. Chidi stepped inside, his expensive shoes looking absurd on the worn lino floor, and then he saw him, sitting in the chair. It was Kunle. Thinner, bearded, his eyes milky and blind, but it was him. Chidi's heart hammered in his chest. He's alive. He's right here. He rushed forward, grabbing Kunle's shoulders. "Kunle, my cousin, it's me, Chidi, we found you." Kunle flinched at the sudden contact, confused. "Chidi?" he repeated, the name meaning nothing to him. Chidi turned to Amara, his eyes shining with fake tears. "You," he said, taking her hands. "You saved him. You are an angel. Our family is forever in your debt. We can never repay you." He looked around the tiny, poor room. He looked at Amara's worn dress and her swollen belly. An idea, cold and brilliant, began to form in his mind. He could still control this. He could turn this situation to his advantage. He would be the hero who found the lost heir. And this poor pregnant girl? She was a complication, a messy detail that needed to be cleaned up. He smiled his most charming smile at Amara. "We must get him the best doctors immediately," he said. "But for now you must let us handle everything." Amara nodded, overwhelmed. She thought he was an angel. She had no idea she had just invited the devil into her home. Chidi moved quickly. Within the hour, a private ambulance, discreet and efficient, arrived. 2 men in neat uniforms gently helped Kunle to his feet. "Where are they taking me?" Kunle asked, his voice filled with anxiety. He reached out a hand, searching for the only person he trusted. "Amara?" "I'm here, Kachi," she said, her voice thick with unshed tears. She took his hand. It felt like saying goodbye. Chidi stepped between them, his presence like a wall. "Don't worry, my dear," he said to Amara, his voice smooth as silk. "We're taking him to our family's private clinic. The best doctors in the country will see him. They need to run tests. It's a very delicate situation. For his recovery, he needs a quiet, controlled environment, no distractions." The meaning behind his words was clear. You are a distraction. Amara's heart sank. "Can I come with him?" she asked, her voice small. Chidi gave her a look of pity that felt more insulting than anger. "My dear girl, it's a hospital, not a place for visitors right now. His father, Chief Olan Rawaju, is an old man. His heart is weak. We have to reintroduce Kunle to his life slowly. Seeing you there, it would complicate things. It would raise questions we are not ready to answer." He was separating them, so easily, so completely. Kunle squeezed her hand tighter. "I don't want to go without you, Amara." This was Chidi's moment to strike. He put a hand on Kunle's shoulder. "Cousin, this lady has been your guardian angel. We owe her everything, but now it is our family's turn to care for you. You need proper medical attention. We will bring you home." He then turned his charming smile back to Amara. "And you, my dear, will be rewarded, handsomely. The Olan Rawaju family does not forget its debts. We will give you enough money to start a new life. A house, a business, anything you want. Just give us some space to help him heal." It was a transaction, a payment for services rendered. He was buying her silence, buying her absence. Amara looked at Kunle's confused, sightless face. He needed doctors. He needed his family. Who was she to stand in the way of that? A poor girl who had shared her room with him. Love was not enough to heal his eyes or his mind. She had to let him go, for his own good. Tears finally spilled from her eyes. "Okay," she whispered, her voice breaking. She let go of Kunle's hand. The feeling of his empty palm was the loneliest feeling in the world. "Take care of him," she said to Chidi. "Of course," Chidi promised, his eyes glinting with victory. "You have my word." She stood in her doorway and watched as they led him away. He turned his head back towards her room, as if he could feel her gaze. Then he was gone. The sleek ambulance drove away, leaving a cloud of dust and a gaping hole in Amara's world. She went back into her room. It was empty. The chair he always sat in was empty. The space on the floor where he slept was empty. The silence was no longer comforting. It was loud, heavy, and suffocating. Chidi had promised her a reward, but Amara knew she had just given away the only thing she had ever truly treasured. Was she a fool to believe the promises of a rich man? The Orphan Rawaju mansion was a cage of suffocating luxury. Kunle was given a suite of rooms that was bigger than Amara's entire compound. Servants hovered, doctors came and went, and a stream of tearful relatives he did not recognize came to see him. But all he felt was a profound sense of dislocation. He was at Kunle, they said. This was his home. But his home, his real home, was a tiny warm room with a kente cloth over the window. His real home was Amara. His father, Chief Orphan Rawaju, was a giant of a man, overwhelmed with joy and grief. He would sit with Kunle for hours, talking about his childhood, trying to jog his memory. "And the accident," the chief said one afternoon, his voice heavy. "The police said your car was forced off the road. It's a miracle you survived. Chidi was the first one on the scene. He had a feeling something was wrong when you were late, so he drove out looking for you himself. He found the wreck." Kunle listened, trying to piece it together. An accident. A wreck. Chidi's cologne. The chief chuckled sadly. "I can't stand the stuff, but he loves it. He said the whole car smelled of it after he pulled you out." At the mention of the cologne, something clicked in Kunle's mind. A key turned in a rusty lock. He wasn't in the clinic or the mansion. He was back in the car. The terrifying screech of metal, the shattering of glass, the dizzying spin. He was trapped, his head bleeding, his vision blurring into darkness. He heard two voices outside the car. One was frantic. "Is he dead?" And the other, a voice he now recognized, smooth, calm, and cold as ice. Chidi's voice. "He's still breathing. Go back and finish the job. Make it look like a robbery." The world tilted. The luxurious room around Kunle faded, replaced by the memory, sharp and sickeningly clear. Chidi, his cousin, the man who had been pretending to be his savior, his concerned relative. He hadn't found the wreck. He had caused it. He hadn't tried to save him. He had tried to murder him. The blindness, the memory loss. It wasn't an accident. It was an assassination attempt. And the man who ordered it was now walking freely in his house, patting him on the back, calling him a cousin. A cold, terrifying clarity washed over Kunle. He finally understood. Chidi wanted the empire, and he, Kunle, was the only thing standing in his way. He looked at his father, who was still talking, oblivious to the bomb that had just exploded in his son's mind. Kunle knew he could not say a word. Not yet. Chidi was clever. He had everyone fooled. Who would believe a man with a broken memory over the nephew who had been so loyal for the past year? He had to be smart. He had to play the part of the confused, grateful survivor. And Amara. A new, urgent terror seized him. Chidi knew where she was. He had painted her as a complication, a gold digger. What would a man who had tried to kill his own cousin do to a poor, pregnant girl who knew the truth? He had to get to her. He had to protect her. "Father," Kunle said, his voice calm despite the storm raging inside him. This doctor, the one who can help with my eyes, when can I see him? He had to get his sight back. He had to see the snake's face clearly. And then he would make him pay. But first, he had to escape this gilded cage and find the woman who was his true home. His life and hers depended on it. For the next few days, Kunle became the perfect patient. He was docile, confused, and grateful. He let Chidi guide him, listened to the family stories, and pretended that his mind was still a thick fog. But behind his blind eyes, a plan was forming. Every polite smile from Chidi, every concerned touch on his shoulder, felt like a viper's strike. Kunle's greatest weapon was that Chidi thought he was weak, a broken man. He used it to his advantage. He needed an ally. He found one in an unexpected place, the family's oldest driver, a quiet, gray-haired man named Dauda. Dauda had served the Olanrawaju family since before Kunle was born. He was loyal to the chief, not to Chidi's new regime. One afternoon, when Dauda was helping him walk in the garden, Kunle spoke, his voice low and urgent. Dauda, I need your help. It must be a secret, from everyone, especially from Chidi. Dauda stopped, surprised. Young Master Kunle, what is it? I remember more than they think, Kunle said. I need you to find someone for me. A young woman. Her name is Amara. She lives in a compound near Balogan Market. She is pregnant. She saved my life. Dauda's eyes widened slightly. He had heard Chidi's version of the story, that a girl had found Kunle and was trying to extort the family. Chidi is lying about her, Dauda, Kunle continued, his voice firm. He is lying about many things. I trust you. Will you find her for me? Tell her I am coming for her. Tell her to be careful. Seeing the desperate sincerity on Kunle's face, a face he had watched grow from a boy to a man, Dauda made a decision. He nodded slowly. I will find her, sir. I will do it today. Meanwhile, Chidi was working on his own plan. He went to his uncle, Chief Olanrawaju. Uncle, he said, his face a mask of concern. We need to talk about the girl. The one who found him? Yes, we must reward her, the chief said.
Of course, Chidi agreed smoothly. But she is a complication. She is from the slums. She is pregnant with another man's child. If the press gets hold of this story, they will twist it. They will say Kunle was living in sin with this girl. It will be a scandal. It could damage the company's reputation. He let the words hang in the air. I think it is best if I handle it quietly, Chidi continued. I will give her a generous sum of money, enough for her to disappear and start a new life somewhere else, far away from Lagos. It is kinder for everyone, especially for Kunle. He needs to focus on his recovery, not on some girl from his past troubles. Chief Olanrawaju, worried and exhausted, agreed. Yes, you are right, Chidi. Handle it. Just be fair to her. She did save my son. I will be more than fair, uncle, Chidi said with a smile. He would give Amara a check that would buy her silence and send her away forever. And if she refused to be bought? A man who could arrange a car crash could certainly arrange for a poor, pregnant girl to have an accident. The stage was set. Chidi thought he was in control, but he did not know that his blind, broken cousin was one step ahead, playing a dangerous game of his own. The clock was ticking. Would Dauda find Amara before Chidi's generous offer arrived? The day of the operation arrived. The procedure to restore Kunle's sight was complex, a delicate dance of lasers and lenses performed by the best surgeon in the country. Kunle lay on the operating table, not with fear, but with a fierce, burning determination. Let me see, he prayed. Let me see her face. Hours later, he was back in his hospital room, his eyes covered in thick bandages. The doctor said the surgery was a success, but they would not know for sure until the bandages came off the next day. Chidi was there, oozing concern. Rest now, cousin. Tomorrow, you will see the world again. I will see you, Kunle thought. I will see you for what you are. Across the city, Dauda the driver navigated the crowded streets, his heart heavy with his secret mission. He found the tenement yard Amara lived in. The neighbors pointed him to her room.
He knocked on the door. There was no answer. He knocked again, louder. Amara! A woman with a wrapper tied around her chest, Mama Funke, came out of the next room. Who are you looking for? She demanded. I am looking for Amara, the young pregnant girl. Mama Funke's face softened with worry. Ah, Amara. She is not here. The poor girl. She has not been herself since her man left. She barely eats. This morning, she collapsed. We had to carry her to the small clinic down the road. The baby. They say the baby is coming early. A cold dread washed over Dauda. He got the clinic's address and ran back to his car. He found Amara in a small, poorly equipped room, lying on a narrow bed, her face pale with pain and exhaustion. She was in labor. Alone. Amara, Dauda said gently. I am a friend. Kunle sent me. Her eyes, full of pain, widened at the mention of his name. Kunle? He is safe. He remembers. He sent me to find you, Dauda said quickly. This place is not good enough. We have to move you. Now. With the help of a stunned nurse, he carefully moved Amara into the back of the plush Mercedes. He drove as fast as he could, not to a local clinic, but to the exclusive, high-tech hospital wing where Kunle was recovering. He used the chief's name to get her admitted immediately. The next morning, the surgeon arrived to remove Kunle's bandages. Chief Olanrawaju and Chidi stood by, watching. The doctor carefully unwrapped the gauze. All right, Adekunle, the surgeon said softly. Open your eyes, slowly. Kunle blinked. Once, twice. The world was a blur of light and shadow. Then slowly, shapes began to form. Colors bled into existence. He could see. He saw the doctor's face. He saw his father's tear-streaked, joyous expression. And then he turned his head and saw Chidi, smiling his false, treacherous smile. It was the face from his nightmares. The face of his would-be murderer. I can see, Kunle said, his voice quiet but strong. My son! My son! The chief cried, hugging him. Kunle's eyes scanned the room. Where is she? He asked. Where is Amara? Chidi's smile faltered. Cousin, now is not the time to worry about... Just then, the door opened. A nurse rushed in. Chief Olanrawaju, sir. The girl your driver brought in. She has given birth to a boy, but she is weak. She is calling for someone named Kachi. Everything stopped. Chief Olanrawaju looked confused. Chidi's face went pale. Kunle pushed himself up. His legs were weak, but his will was iron. He looked directly at Chidi, his newly sighted eyes burning with an intensity that made the blood run cold. Take me to her, he commanded. The beggar was gone. The air had returned. The confrontation happened in the pristine white corridor outside Amara's room. As Kunle, supported by his father, made his way down the hall, they were met by Chidi, who was rushing to intercept them. Uncle Kunle, this is madness, Chidi hissed, trying to block their path. Let me handle this. The girl is a nobody. I will give her money, she will sign a paper, and she will be out of our lives. Think of the family's reputation. Kunle looked at his cousin, truly seeing him for the first time since the accident. He saw the panic behind the polished exterior, the greed in his eyes. The family's reputation, Kunle said, his voice dangerously calm. You want to talk about reputation, Chidi? He turned to his father. Father, the night of the accident. It was no accident. I remember it all now. I remember being forced off the road, and I remember Chidi's voice. He told his hired thug to finish the job. Chief Olanrawaju stared, his face a mask of disbelief. What are you saying, Kunle? Chidi, he saved you. No, father, Kunle said, his gaze locked on Chidi. He tried to kill me. He wanted the company. He wanted everything. And you, he said, his voice dropping to a venomous whisper. We're going to get rid of the one person in the world who showed me kindness, weren't you? Chidi's composure finally shattered. He began to sweat. He's lying. His memory is damaged and he's confused, he stammered, looking at the chief for support. But Chief Olanrawaju was looking at his son's eyes, now clear and full of a terrible certainty. And he was looking at his nephew's face, now crumbling with guilt. He knew. A father knows. Is it true, Chidi? The chief asked, his voice a low, heartbroken growl. Chidi saw it was over. He made one last desperate move, lunging for Kunle. "You have ruined everything," he screamed. But two hospital security guards, alerted by the nurse, were already there. They grabbed Chidi, restraining his arms. His expensive suit was wrinkled, his face twisted in a snarl of pure hatred. "I should have made sure you were dead," he spat at Kunle as they dragged him away. The ugly words hung in the silent hallway. Chief Olan Rawaju leaned against the wall, his face ashen, the betrayal a physical blow. Kunle did not watch them take Chidi away. His eyes were on the door to Amara's room. He pushed it open and walked inside. She was lying in the bed, looking small and pale. But when she saw him, her eyes lit up. He was no longer the blind man she had cared for. He was tall and straight, his face clean-shaven, his eyes clear and focused on her. He walked to her bedside. He looked at her, truly seeing her for the first time. He saw the strength in her tired eyes, the kindness in her face, the love that had been his only light in the darkness. She was more beautiful than he could have ever imagined. A nurse placed a small, bundled blanket in his arms. He looked down at the tiny, perfect face of his son. The baby had his eyes, and Amara's strong chin. Tears streamed down Kunle's face. He looked from his son to the woman who had saved him in every way a person could be saved. "Amara," he whispered, his voice thick with emotion. "You can see," she whispered back, a tear rolling down her own cheek. "Yes," he said, his gaze holding hers. "I can see everything. I see you." 6 months later, the sun streamed through the large glass windows of a beautiful house in Ikoyi. It was not the cold palace of Kunle's childhood, but a home filled with light and laughter. The scent of egusi soup drifted from the kitchen. In the living room, Chief Olan Rawaju sat on a plush sofa, a look of pure adoration on his face as he dangled a silver rattle above his grandson. The baby, named Obina, which meant father's heart, gurgled with delight. The scandal of Chidi's betrayal had been handled quietly but decisively. He was in prison, and the Olan Rawaju empire was secure. But the chief had learned a valuable lesson. His true wealth was not in his bank accounts, but in this room. Amara came in, carrying a tray of drinks. She was no longer the timid girl from the market. Motherhood and love had given her a quiet confidence. She wore a simple but elegant dress, and her hair was styled in intricate braids. She had started taking business classes, her sharp mind finally given the chance to flourish. Kunle had insisted. "You were born to run things," he had told her, "starting with my heart." She smiled as she watched the chief with their son. She had not just gained a husband, she had gained a father, the one she had lost so long ago. Kunle came up behind her, wrapping his arms around her waist. He rested his chin on her shoulder, his gaze following hers. He was a different man now. The trauma of his ordeal had left its mark, but it had also forged him into someone stronger, more compassionate. He ran a division of the company, but he always came home by 5. "What are you thinking about?" he asked softly. "I was just thinking about my little room," she confessed. "The leaky roof, the single chair. That was the best home I ever had," he said, his voice sincere, "because you were in it." He turned her around to face him. He looked into her eyes the way he always did, as if he were drinking in the sight of her. For him, seeing was still a miracle, one he never took for granted. Later that evening, as the sun set, casting a golden glow over the Lagos lagoon, Kunle stood on the balcony, watching Amara rock Obina to sleep in the garden below. He remembered sitting in the dark of her room, unable to see her face, but able to feel the size of her heart. He had been a blind beggar then, with nothing to his name. He had regained his sight, his fortune, and his family name. But it was only now, watching the woman who had saved him and the son they had created, that he understood the truth. He had not truly seen the world until he saw it through her love.